Well, good morning. My name is Jim Miller, and I'm the Executive Director of the League of Minnesota Cities, and I want to thank you for being with us today to hear stories from Minnesota's elected officials about the dire need that their communities are facing to meet the transportation needs, the street needs that we have in our 850-some communities in Minnesota. You might not know that cities in Minnesota are responsible for the construction and maintenance of over 22,000 miles of streets. And this is, as you know, of course, an incredibly important part of the state's overall transportation network. And yet it is this last mile, so to speak, that often receives the least attention, and it is the area that is most troublesome in terms of funding for city officials. We do know and we do appreciate the funding that the state provides through a number of programs and has done so historically. We also know that that amount of funding in and of itself is inadequate. And what we're here to do today is to make the case for a new dedicated source of funding for cities to make the kinds of investments in their communities that are so essential to keep the economies of our communities and the state vibrant. We have a half dozen mayors who will be offering their city's perspective on that topic this morning and why immediate action is necessary. And after the remarks, we'll open the floor for questions. And as you can see, the 6 mayors that will be speaking are flanked by 20 or so more city officials, mayors and city council members, as well as representatives from the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, the Metro Cities, and the Minnesota Association of Small Cities. So again, thank you for being here to hear this important message today. And with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, the Honorable Mayor of St. Paul, Chris Coleman.
As Jim mentioned, we're joined by mayors from across the state of Minnesota and representing cities of all sizes and all political stripes with the unified message that our cities need more support to fix local roads. I suspect that if we could have figured out the logistics and scheduling, we would have had almost every mayor in the state of Minnesota that would have been standing here, because this is an issue that affects every community in our state. Certainly in a city of St. Paul's size, with the number of roads that we have, this is a monumental problem for us, but it is true of every city of every size in the state. Mayors know that the thing that frustrates our constituents more than anything is a street that is filled with potholes, that rattles their suspensions in their cars, that causes them to have to go into get their car fixed up. Doesn't help. The insurance agents aren't too happy about that either, because it's costing them money. But the fact of the matter is, as Jim mentioned, it is the last road traveled, the first mile traveled, the last mile traveled in most journeys, it's the issue that's ignored generally when we talk about fixing roads and bridges across the state of Minnesota. We have over 180 resolutions that have been signed by councils and mayors across the state of Minnesota to say that we need a dedicated funding source for local street funding. The cities, again, are large and small, urban and rural, but we are united in our call to have dedicated funding for our streets. So far, the Minnesota House, the Minnesota Senate, and the Governor have all proposed transportation funding packages that are similar in scope but different in funding mechanisms. There are provisions for local streets in both the House and the Senate bill, but we need a solution that propels us forward, that provides adequate resources to fix our roads, and to ultimately get us where we need to be in the state of Minnesota when it comes to local transportation needs. I have often said that in the city of St. Paul, if you think about it, a truck that is traveling across the state of Minnesota to deliver goods, it might come up off of 35, it might come up off of 94, but at the end of the day it has to get off and travel that last mile on the local street. So we can't pay attention to the freeway without paying attention to the last mile traveled that goes through the city of St. Paul. I'm honored to be here with so many different mayors. We're going to be joined by the mayor of Nicollet, Red Wing, White Bear Lake, Minneapolis, and Frazee. And so we're just pleased to be here and united in our support for additional sources for our roads. There'll be time for questions afterwards, but at this time, I think turning it to Fred Fraley, Mayor of Nicollet.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Mayor Fred Fralick of Nicollet, Minnesota, population 1,116. I also co-chair, along with Mayor Coleman, a committee known as the 84% Coalition, Mayors for Municipal Roads to give cities the help they need. My city is one of more than 700 cities in our state with a population of 5,000 or less. None of those cities are eligible for dedicated highway user tax distribution fund dollars. So Nicollet, like those other 700 cities, depends on local property taxes and other local income sources for funding of street maintenance. These methods of funding are becoming unsustainable. With the completion of the Highway 14 build-out in 2016, Nicollet will receive another half mile of city streets from MnDOT when they turn back a portion of State Highway 99 to us, and we will have to bear the increasing costs of road repair and replacement without a corresponding increase in our property tax base. It is critical to us that the Omnibus Transportation Funding Bill include new funding for non-municipal state aid city streets. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Dan Bender, Mayor of Red Wing. Thank you to the League of Minnesota Cities for the opportunity to discuss funding for streets at this press conference. I'm here today to emphasize that adequately funded city streets are essential to mobility and economic vitality of our communities. Red Wing is home to over 16,000 residents, 550 businesses, and we also draw more than 1.5 million visitors per year. Those visitors drive on our city streets to reach popular commercial and recreational destinations. But our streets are more than just nice places to drive. Beneath them are sewer, water, and storm sewer systems that are now 150 years old and are in need of replacement. Our 5-year capital improvement budget, or plan, includes $33 million in street reconstruction investment and over $10 million investment in sewer, water, and stormwater infrastructure. Our needs in Red Wing are greater than our property taxpayers can bear on our own. Now, I know our transportation funding issues are not unique to Red Wing, and we applaud and support the legislators that made transportation funding a central issue in their campaigns. We are all here today to encourage our state lawmakers to follow through on their commitment to a strong transportation bill, which creates new sustainable funding sources to support the diversity of transportation needs that we share for the safety and benefit of all Minnesotans. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joe Emerson. I'm the mayor of White Bear Lake and a League of Minnesota Cities board member. Though my city is large enough to receive the municipal street aid funding, we still face significant challenges. It's a fact that maintenance costs of city streets increase as these streets age. Maintenance projects like seal coating and overlay can prolong a street's life cycle to 50 to 60 years. Without ongoing maintenance, we are looking at a life expectancy of 25 to 30 years. When a street is being done, as Mayor Bender said, it includes more than just the pavement on the surface. The water and sewer lines beneath the street need to be upgraded. Street lights, traffic signals, railroad crossings, and ADA requirements also need to be addressed. So you can see many components make a street project costly. When a county or state highway project is undertaken in our cities, we are expected to pay a share. Municipal street aid cities must be able to use their funding on their own system. The current system is straining city budgets and forcing cities to delay their own maintenance. Cities are unique, and what works for one does not work for another. What is consistent among us is that every street has needs outside the constitutional formula. What we are asking for and will continue to ask for is additional, dedicated, and stable funding to ensure we are able to maintain our streets. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Hank Ledke. I'm mayor of Frazee. Unlike the city of Nicollet, Frazee is one of 707 cities in the state of Minnesota that has a population of 5,000 or less of the total 843 cities in the state. Our city has a population of 1,372. We have about 15 miles of paved roads in the city, 3 miles of gravel streets and alleys. I'm here to speak briefly on the transportation issues in small cities. With many different issues with transportation, road maintenance tends to be one of the most noticeable and talked about, especially the last mile, as Mayor Coleman had talked about. The last mile is the first and last roads you drive on every day. The road that leaves the lasting impression on how your travel experience was for you there. This last mile is generally under the authority of one of the 707 cities under 5,000 population that does not receive state funding for our roads. Transportation is not a partisan issue in our city. We work with our staff, consultants, and residents to address our infrastructure needs. Specifically, I would like to discuss the funding of roads and bridges in small cities. This hits home for us particularly in Frazee. We are continually working on ways to improve road conditions. For the last 10 years, we have struggled to do the adequate maintenance to our roads and bridges due to fluctuating revenue sources, stressing our residents and our local economy more than the sheer cost of maintaining. To put it into perspective, our city, Frazee's general fund, 101, is $1.3 million. We have forecast that we need $1.5 million worth of road improvements between 2015 and 2025. Our one-year budget is $200,000 less than what we need for 10 years just for road maintenance. There is no county partnership for these projects, no state partnership for these projects. As of today, we will not be able to fund these projects. We are projecting that we will only have enough money to do 35% of what is needed. We cannot just simply raise taxes to continue to seal coat with oil and P-rock or place assessment to the adjoining properties. So we need to be smart about what we do to maintain these roads. It boils down to having a plan and a proactive street maintenance program. Ladies and gentlemen, it boils down to dollars and cents. We propose the legislature enact a long-term solution to our failing infrastructure and allocate among these funds to the communities fewer than 5,000. Our top 4 reasons to support these is fairness, allow us to control our own communities, increase safety and longevity of roads in our rural communities, and that's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I am Betsy Hodges, the mayor of Minneapolis and past president of the League of Minnesota Cities. And I can tell you it's not every day that you can gather, you can have elected officials from all across the state drop everything to come and talk about an issue. But we are all here today because we know that even though the numbers in our city might differ, the need does not. That we have property taxpayers who are solely responsible for paying for the maintenance, upkeep, and renovation of our local streets, and that those local streets are actually regional and statewide assets. And so we have come today to talk and to say and to carry the message that action in the legislature on this sort of transportation funding is a must-do for this session to make sure that this asset that we have in each of our cities is something that is preserved and something that is maintained. One of the numbers I can give you in Minneapolis is it would cost $15 million just to keep our streets in the condition they are in right now. That isn't improving them, that isn't building new streets, that's just to maintain the level that we're at now, which is not the level that anybody would like. So again, we are all here today because we know that this is important for our city, for our constituents, but also for the state of Minnesota. Because as Mayor Coleman said, the end of every trip is a local street. So I will turn it back over to Nicole.